So boom, this what happened. I took 3 yards of tulle and I cut it into 3 separate yards. And then I took those yards and I put them on top of each other and I folded it in half. And that gave me 14 layers all together. Then I'm going to cut those 14 layers into 2-inch strips. And since I want my tulle to be like staggered and ruffled and uneven, I don't want it to be all like straight and perfect looking. I'm staggering the tulle now and just making sure that everything is just a little misaligned before I cut it in half. So when I tie it in a knot, the ends will be different lengths. And shout out to this time lapse for making this look super fast and super easy. Well, it is easy, but it takes forever to cut this tulle into a bunch of strips and then cut those strips in half and then stagger the tulle and then tie a bunch of knots around the elastic. Like, this is definitely a no-sew and it's definitely easy, but it is time consuming if you want it to come out right. So make sure you cut out at least a couple of hours for this project. And depending on how long you want your skirt to be or your tutu to be, you can cut the trim longer or you can just leave it as one long strip and it'll be a super long poofy tutu. But I wanted mine to be real short because him's is like a real short close to his body. So I wanted mine to be like that. But you can make yours longer if you like. Just don't cut it in half. Cut it to the length you desire. But yeah, literally all you're going to do is take a piece of elastic and wrap it around your waist or wherever you want it to be to see how long you want it and leave enough room so that you can tie that elastic in a knot as well. Then you're going to take your pieces of tulle and literally just do a double knot around the elastic. And you're going to do that step over and over and over again. Just knot it one time and then knot it again. I know you can't really see what I'm doing. This is a horrible, horrible visual, but you can hear it. You can't really see it, but you can hear it. You get the point. Just double knot around your elastic, and it don't look like much right now, but it's going to add up so fast, and it's going to be super poofy once you start separating the pieces of tulle, because right now they're all kind of stuck together, but once you floof them out, oh my god, it's going to be gorgeous. But anyway, yeah, once you're done with that, tie your elastic in a knot, and this is what it's going to look like. Moving right along to the necktie, you can make this the exact same way if you want, if you don't mind pulling it over your head. But because I'm doing a bunch of face makeup, I didn't want to be pulling this over my head and risk messing my makeup up. So I'm going to do this one, the sewed version. But you can absolutely just do the no sew and just tie a knot around a piece of elastic the width of your neck, and it will work just as fine. So for the sewn version, I used a roll of tulle because it was the perfect length, at least for me. You could also have used the roll of tulle for the tutu if you wanted this specific length. But I wanted mine to be a little bit longer, so I used yardage of tulle instead. But I just layered the tulle up just the same. But of course, I did this one first and didn't realize that I needed 14 layers instead of 7. So here I'm doing 7 layers of tulle, and I just did 2 basting stitches across the top of the tulle, and then I gathered it until the length of I needed it around my neck, and then I realized this isn't thick enough. So I cut out a couple layers of netting just to make it stand up a little bit more, and I put 7 more layers of tulle. So now we're at 14 layers again, with 2 layers of netting in between just for stability. And I did the same exact thing. 2 basting stitches across the top, and then I pulled them until they were gathered at the length that I needed. And then of course I had to sew them together because I messed it up the first time. So that's an extra step for me, but you can skip that work if you just do 14 layers at once. This is also how I realized that I wanted my layers to be staggered and not so even and straight, because once this was done, my layers were so straight that I wasn't really pleased with it. It looked so neat. It looked too neat. I needed to mess it up, so I cut it up a little bit and roughed it up a little bit, but I could have just dealt with that if I would have just staggered the layers. It wouldn't have been a problem. So if you want yours to be a little bit messy, make sure you stagger the layers before you put them together. Once I was done sewing all the layers together, I took a piece of ribbon and sewed it to each side and you can use that to tie it around your neck. And this necktie is done. On to the next one. Lastly, I want to move on to making the little lobster claws, because that is definitely a major piece to his costume. So I took 2 layers of felt and I just drew a shape up. It's not exact, it's just similar to a lobster claw that I looked up on Google. Close enough. But I took those 2 layers of felt and I just did a basting stitch around the edge, because I wanted those 2 layers to be one piece. I wanted it to be a little bit thicker and a little bit stiffer, so I could hold this shape once I put my hand inside. Now that I have the front and the back to the claw, I'm going to pin them together, and then I'm going to make the shape to where it kind of open and closes. The hinge, I guess, because it actually is a hinge on him. So the hinge. So I'm going to take my little drawing, cut out the piece where it turns the little circle at, where it opens and closes. And I'm just going to mark where it is. And I'm going to do those stitches with black thread, just so it can stick out just a little bit. And we're not sewing the pieces together. We're only sewing a design on each side. So you don't want to sew it together or you won't be able to put your hand in. Just make sure you sew on one side at a time. I just pinned them together because I wanted the lines to meet up at the same exact point. Once I was done with the little decorative stitching, I needed to put the little bolt that holds the hinge together. So I just cut out a little circle for each layer. So there's 4 circles in total, 1 for the front and back of each hand. And I just sewed that on with black thread as well, just so it could stick out and you could see it more. And once I'm done finally with all the decorating of the layers, I'm going to hold them together and hold them together. I'm going to pin them together and then sew all the way around the perimeter, leaving an opening for me to put my hand in. And make sure if you're using felt that you leave a wide enough opening for your hand, because felt does not stretch. So you won't be able to stretch the opening. So make sure you measure it before you sew it up. And you're only sewing the perimeter, not along the black stitching, only around the outside. The black stitching is just for decorative purposes only. But once you're done stitching around the outside, you're going to clip the corner of the tips of the little claw parts, the little triangular parts. You need to clip it or it won't be able to point out once you flip it inside out. And these are done. That's it. This costume is done. Let's get into the final looks because it's about to be a schmovie.